Welcome to the Dreams Are Real podcast, where we aim to ignite the fire that allows you to unleash your greatest potential. I'm your host, Dan McPherson, and I'm on a mission to help you own your story on the way to building your ideal life. The first step toward achieving your dreams is to overcome the momentum of zero. Take a step and let that motion dispel the emotions of fear, worry, or self-doubt. No matter where you are in your life or career, only you can make that choice. The good news, you've got this. Why? Because dreams are real. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Dreams Are Real podcast. I'm your host, Dan McPherson. I am happy to have you with us, and I'm happy to have our special guest with us today as well. We've been talking a lot recently in the Dreams Are Real podcast group on Facebook, which you should join if you haven't already, by the way, about our guests, about the variety of things that they do in the world, about the successes that they have, about the dreams that they have been following. And today is no exception. We are joined by one of my friends and a person that I encountered in a very interesting way, Juli Nimitz. Juli is a VP of the board and a treasurer at Pause, which she will tell you all about shortly, and where she does amazing things for pets in the world. In addition, she has been an IT recruiter. She has traveled the world and just has so many amazing stories to tell. I can't wait for you to encounter these stories from her. Welcome, Juli. I'm glad to have you here.
Well, thank you, Dan.
So, Juli, you and I met in an interesting way. We met on an airplane on the way back from the Philippines, and I feel like learning more and more about you, that's almost a microcosm of your world, that you meet people in interesting places and you do interesting things. How do you how do you sum up what you're doing in the world right now?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. I love to travel. I am very curious about other people, and I've been to a lot of countries. I think some of your followers saw my Facebook post about just being in Paris. I just came back from Munich. I went to Oktoberfest, but I've also gone to some very remote areas. A long time ago, I actually went down to the Amazon jungle and met the Ashwar people at an eco lodge, and we were invited to a very remote region because they had never seen a blonde.
Wow, they'd never seen a blonde.
Right. They through a variety of interpreters, I learned from the chief that the reason we were invited to his village was that he heard rumors of people with yellow hair, and he didn't believe it. So he wanted to see for himself.
Wow. I've heard rumors of people with yellow hair. So I and as it turns out, they're pretty true. How did he respond when he saw the yellow hair? Did he just drop down in awe, or did he say something?
No, not at all. But the kids were amazed. I mean, the children were, I think they thought it still wasn't true. It was very National Geographic-like.
I don't suppose you had a camera with you to film this moment.
No, you can't do that because they think that you will take their souls.
Well, let's not take their souls or convince the tribe that that's what we're doing. Probably would not be the best idea in the world. That's an amazing story. And I think that may be the first story that you ever told me. I believe we were sitting next to each other and I asked what the most exciting thing that had happened to you was, and you shared that. And I was instantly hooked on the story of your life. So as you think back, maybe a little further, we'll come back into this life of adventure that you lead now. Let's think back to when you were younger. What is your personal origin story? Where are you from? Where does the Juli of today have her origin?
Well, actually, I am from a small town in Southern Ohio. And to put it in a nutshell, I can't believe I'm living the life I'm living. There's nothing in my early history that would ever indicate this. I am the oldest of 5 children. There was a period of time when my family was very impoverished. And truthfully, I never thought I'd even get to Florida, let alone travel the world. And because of some decisions I've made in the kind of life that I want to have, I've ended up being a world traveler.
That's pretty amazing. It's a long journey from there to here. I share a bit of that journey, having grown up with a number of struggles myself. And so I can appreciate it. I can also appreciate how not feeling like you may ever make it, even as far as Florida, can seem when you are landlocked in the middle of Ohio. When you were a kid, what was your dream? You say it's ended up different than you would ever have thought. What did you think? What were you hoping for?
Well, truthfully, my biggest goal when I was a kid is I wanted to have a good enough job that I could own a house. That was the major thing I wanted. Now, as far as careers, I've always loved animals. At one point, I wanted to be a veterinarian. I think that was out of the cards because, the education just costs so much, and I'm not from a wealthy background. So other times I'm very artistic. I wanted to be an artist, but I decided not to pursue that because I wanted to buy a house, and I thought I couldn't make enough money. So to make a long story short, I ended up being a chemical engineer. But the only reason I did that is because someone insulted me and said I couldn't do it. So that's how I became a chemical engineer.
So is that how you've done many things in your life? People have said you can't do it, and so you have?
Yeah. That is a consistent pattern for me.
I'll keep that in mind. That may be helpful at some point. That's pretty incredible. You can't be a chemical engineer, and so you are. It seems about as far away from pets and animals and all of that as it possibly could be, though.
Well, I've often thought about that. Because my original plan that I had, it just seemed like the reality of my situation, it wasn't going to happen. However, over time, I think things have worked out perfectly because, first of all, when you're an engineer, you get to work with smart people. And I really enjoy being with smart people. I learn a lot from them. And then my whole career was actually the story of recessions. And when recessions happen, you have to come up with a plan very quickly. And I always had this plan, I'll be an engineer. And at the time I graduated, it was a big thing for engineers to go get a law degree so they could be patent attorneys.
Okay.
And that was what I thought. But a recession came along. And the company I worked for fell into Chapter 11 bankruptcy. And this turnaround artist came in. He fired the sales force and told my boss and myself, "You are now sales."
Wow.
So I learned to sell. I had no choice. So I learned to sell. And then over a period of time, I became an IT recruiter and account manager. And it enabled me to make a good living. And so while I was doing this, I was also a volunteer at PAWS. I've been a volunteer for 25 years. And I used that money so that I could help the animals, which was my desire as a kid. But I never saw that path coming along. It just worked out that way.
Now tell us about PAWS.
PAWS is a no-kill adoption center for dogs and cats. We've been around since 1980. And we are funded entirely by donations. We're not supported by tax money. And I've been a volunteer for 25 years, certainly not to the amount of time I'm putting in these days, because now I'm on the board, I'm doing a lot. But I've been involved with them for a very long time, and I just do whatever they need me to do.
That it sounds like whatever position you've had, you've done whatever they've needed you to do. If you moved from chemical engineer to sales to recruiting and all of these functions, that you've filled whatever role was needed at whatever point you were in your life.
Yes, I would agree with that. And actually, a lot of things I've done, I was stuck, and you just have to move forward. For example, becoming a salesperson, that was not the plan. But
Right.
life kicks in and you do what you have to do and you learn new skills along the way.
Not having planned to be a salesperson and having been nearly forced to do it of necessity, do you enjoy sales now?
I love sales. Absolutely love it. And I never foresaw that. And I think I love it because of the kind of sales I get to do. Because when I'm working, I am working with managers and directors to solve their needs for IT personnel. So I'm getting to work with really smart people.
Filling a lot of roles, working with smart people, connecting. I'm assuming somewhere on this path, you fulfilled that childhood dream of getting a house.
Yes, I did.
Does it look like the little pictures that you drew when you were a kid, or is it a little different?
Actually, it's bigger than what I ever thought I would have. But, my goal wasn't a big house. It was just to have a house. And Dan, I think I should insert something here. One thing I neglected to tell you and to tell your listeners is the reason that having a house was so important to me is during the period of poverty that I went through, there were 4 different occasions that I was within 24 hours of being homeless. And my mother and dad, my dad was very sick. My mother just wouldn't deal with it. And so I was the person who went and talked to the bank.
And how old were you?
The first time I did it, I was 14.
Oh my.
And this occurred over a period of about 3 years. And so because of that, I've had a fear of homelessness. So it has always been important to me to own my own home.
How did you find the courage at 14 years old to walk in and deal with the bank about something that your parents would normally deal with and they would probably be scared of?
Well, you do what you have to do. And so I just did it. I didn't know what I was going to say, but I knew I had to go. So that's why. And that's why the house thing is so important to me. Stability is important to me.
I can certainly see that. I also have a feeling that might be really the birth of your sales career.
Perhaps. I don't know. I never thought about that, but perhaps.
That may be the first and largest persuasion you needed to complete. So stability was so important, and that explains why it was your early dream. Once you became a chemical engineer and you started doing sales, and presumably money was in a bit better spot, so you find a home. What was the next dream?
The next dream, because of my experience, I have been very terrified of debt. And I had bought a house, but just the whole idea of a mortgage totally freaked me out. And I decided what I was going to do is I was going to learn about money because I'd never been taught. This is kind of common. And I decided to teach myself about money, and I was going to figure out a way to pay my house off. And so I did. Again, that the whole stability issue. I wanted stability. And having been through recessions, I thought, well, if I ever lose my job, at least I won't be homeless.
Right. So that deep-seated fear from when you were a kid, the way to resolve it is to make sure you have something that nobody can take from you.
Exactly.
And when you say pay your house off, I'm assuming you don't mean focus on paying it off in a 30-year period like most people.
No, I did it in 3.5 years.
Wow.
I was very focused. Fear,
that
fear,
requires a lot of focus.
well, fear is a huge motivator.
And what helped you? Focus is one thing, but strategy and implementation that go along with it and allow that to occur so quickly, I have to imagine were a huge component. What allowed you to accomplish that in such a short period of time? And even what allowed you to keep that level of focus? Was it just the fear?
A lot of it was fear. Truthfully, when I first started on my little journey to pay my house off outright, I had no idea what I was doing. So every Saturday, I would go to the library and just read financial magazines. And over time, I just came up with a plan, and I started investing and paid off my house. But it was self-taught. But you do what you have to do.
Another recurring theme in your life, doing what you have to do, right? But also doing what you have to do to create the security that your soul craves. Once you had paid the house off, did you relax?
Sort of, but you develop habits. And so I just kept doing it. And I ended up with a lot of investments because by then I had the habit of investing.
Right. And so now you'd built these really firm, clear, focused habits that allowed you first to pay off debt and then to begin building for the future, right?
Yes, exactly.
And did that change your life in any way? Did that give you peace that you may not have had as a kid or before you had those things?
It does, because it gives you a feeling of having control. It gives you the feeling of not being dependent on others. And I like to, again, just the whole stability thing. I like that feeling that I have created stability for myself.
Good. So you first have a dream to have a house and a place to stay that someone can't take away. Then you have a dream to be independent in a way that you're outside of the negative impact or the potential negative impact of others, really just another form of stability. What has your dream shifted to now?
Well, I love animals and I love paws. And one of the things I have done for them is I wanted them to be stable too, because when you exist on donations, you're not stable. The first thing I did is I paid off their mortgage. So Paws is debt-free. Now, when you're on donations, you're still some level of instability, but you don't have the worry of a mortgage. Now my goal, now that that's done, my goal is to set up an endowment fund. And the goal for that is to come up with $5 million, because since I'm also the treasurer, I researched what kind of stocks would have dividends. And I figured out that if I build up a fund of $5 million in stocks, that would pay their entire budget for a year and be there perpetually. So again, I want Paws to be stable.
That's a pretty incredible vision. And based upon your level of success to this point, I'm assuming that will happen very quickly. Do you have a time horizon for your goal?
Well, things like that, it's never going to be quick enough for me.
Right.
But, that's my goal. I don't know exactly how long it will take, although I have to believe that 5 million is not a big number. You hear of, endowment funds, for example, for universities in hundreds of millions of dollars. So to just want 5 million set aside for Paws, I don't think that's a big number at all.
I think it's a great sign that you feel and understand that it isn't a big number. Most people that I encounter have self-imposed barriers and have not yet connected that dollars and numbers are pretty relative. right? For someone who has $100 million, $5 million is a pretty small amount of money. For someone who has $50, $5 million, it seems an insurmountable amount of money. But in the scope of business and endowments, $5 million, while a really positive and powerful goal, is incredibly achievable. And I'm excited to see your path toward that for sure. As you've gone down the path of working with Pause and beginning this endowment and maybe even doing IT recruiting on your own, it seems that you've helped run teams and companies and helped guide them. Has that been different than you thought it would be?
I don't know if I had a preconceived notion about it. I really don't know what to say about that, Dan.
No problem. If you didn't have a notion, I think there's a lesson to be learned there as well, right? That you encounter things as you encounter them and you do what needs to be done. That's a message that you've shared with us a couple of times already. And maybe it's simply that in some areas you're gathering knowledge and planning, in some areas you're encountering it as it comes, but in either case it sounds that you're consistently looking forward rather than dwelling backward.
I think that would be a fair assessment. I really don't think about the past very much, and I've always been highly goal oriented. And truthfully, I think I got that from my grandmother. And she programmed me early on, telling me that I was capable. And her voice was different from some of the voices I heard, for example, from my mother. Unfortunately, my mother had a medical issue that affected her emotionally. And she would say things like, oh, you're never going to amount to anything. Nobody will ever want to marry you, etc. But my grandmother told me differently. And I decided, I think I was about 11 when I decided this, but I decided that I liked my grandmother's version better than my mother's, and I would only listen to my grandmother. And she had just convinced me from a very early age that I was capable. And when you feel capable, you're always looking forward. You don't look back. It doesn't matter what happens. You just move forward.
The force of character it takes to make that decision at an early age is impressive. I think it matches the other stories that you've shared with us. But I look at most people who receive feedback and they tend to highlight the negative feedback they get and latch on to that, even if there is a significant amount of positive. What do you think it was that caused you to be able to make that decision to say, I'm just not going to listen to the other one. I'm going to listen to my grandmother, especially when your mother would, in theory, have been closer to you physically?
Maybe just self-preservation, I think, because I just liked my grandmother's version better. And I think somehow I knew I had to adopt her mindset if I was going to have a house, basically.
Right. So you were so driven toward your goal that we need any mindset that gets us there. It sounds like your grandmother was an incredible role model for you.
Well, I'm named after her, so yes, she was.
Yes. Well, you're living well and honoring her image in such a powerful way. That is great to hear. As an entrepreneur, and as you describe yourself, I really hear you as an entrepreneur. I know you to be a creative as well, but whether from a creative side or an entrepreneurial side, what would you say has been your defining moment?
Wow. My defining moment, I actually have several of them. And I won't go into details, but I think the defining moment is the moment you make a decision. And your decisions really defined your life going forward. One decision that I made, people tell me frequently that I have project management skills. And they sometimes ask me how I got to be a project manager. And the answer is I made myself a project manager. And one of the things that I did that actually I think helped me in my career and helped me with my attitude is when I was an engineer and my company fell into Chapter 11 bankruptcy, then, or I should say my employer fell into Chapter 11 bankruptcy. I had been working on a proposal to the state of Ohio. And the turnaround guy told me that the person who was scheduled to be the project manager in my proposal was being let go. And that I could not present my proposal to the state of Ohio. And truthfully, I went round and round with him. I said, well, what if I can find somebody? He goes, no, you're not going to find anybody. And this probably continued for 5 minutes. And finally, he got tired of me and he said, okay, if you find someone to be project manager, then you can go ahead and send that proposal to the state. I put my name in. So they were shocked when I won because I gave him a copy of the proposal, but he never read it. Well, I won, $1.3 million from the state, and I was the project manager on it. And he was pretty angry with me. But I told him, this is awful. I said, well, it's my project and I'm going to deliver it. So
why do you say that's awful?
Well, he could have said I was insubordinate. But
he could have, but I suspect you would have overcome that.
Probably. But the whole point is, I know that's a bit of a story, but it was a decision that I was not going to give up on that proposal. And I was going to find a way to move forward. And that, going back to your original question, what's the defining moment? It's always decisions. It's not one thing I've ever done. This story is just an example of a decision and how it played out. But it's just every decision we make defines us and how we're going to be in the future.
Every decision we make defines us and how we're going to be in the future. I think that's a great quote. I suspect we'll see that separately on one of our quote cards for the show. It sums up a lot of very positive things. Along the way, as you have gone on this journey, is that the biggest lesson you've learned, or is there another lesson that you would say this is what sticks with me that maybe is the biggest thing I've learned?
The biggest thing, let me collect my thoughts here a moment, because I actually have maybe two biggest things that
share them both. Bring it.
The first thing that I have learned is the power of habits. I work very hard to have good supportive habits that propel me forward. I actually think that success is a habit, wealth is a habit, health is a habit, good relationships, it's all habits. And that's the first thing I've learned. And that's one thing I work very diligently on, is to always incrementally improve my habits. Because I think everybody's heard the quote, you are what you habitually do. So yes. I work on good habits. The other thing that I have learned along the way is nothing is really as hard as you think it is.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's the other thing I've learned. I thought being a salesperson would be very difficult. And yes, there was a learning curve, but then I mastered it and I enjoyed it. When I got ready to pay off my house, I thought that would take forever. It wasn't difficult. It was just a habit, basically. That took me 3.5 years. I thought it would take me 10. It's those kind of things. Those are my two biggest lessons I've learned along the way.
Those are great lessons. And I think a solid beginning for a new entrepreneur or someone entering the world in a different way. Along those same lines, and maybe the answer is the same, what's something that you wish you'd known when you started?
Wow. I wish I had known that the power of decisions. I used to think and frankly have a bit of fear about what might happen. You know, you think, gee, will I lose my job? You know, will somebody close to me die, etc. And what I've since learned, that when you decide to take basically your life and the kind of life you're going to live into your own hands, it's really a whole lot easier. And again, it comes back to the power of a decision. That yes, I am going to take my life in my own hands, and I'm going to live the life I want.
That resonates very powerfully with me. One of my favorite sayings is that your environment, those people that you're around, the places that you are, it may exert influence, but it's your choices that truly create change.
Absolutely.
As you consider these same people, those who might be at the beginning of their career, or maybe just those who are recovering things, what do you believe is the most important characteristic for someone who is an entrepreneur or who is going down this creative path? What characteristic do you think will help them the most?
Taking action. Truthfully, one thing I've learned along the way is any action beats no action. And just getting started. Truthfully, our plans never work out the way we think they're going to, but as we move along, we grow and we develop, and you'll figure it out. Things do not have to be completely in place to get you where you need to go. The most important thing is just to start, and you'll figure it out as you go along.
Perfection is the enemy of progress, right?
Absolutely.
That's or another, saying it from the other direction, overcome the momentum of zero. Get going. So that I think that is a great characteristic. The need to be in motion, the need to move to get something done. You've mentioned that you like to study, and you have gone and read and become better at financing. Are there any particular resources that have made it easier to chase your dreams?
There's no particular book or training I've ever taken, but I would say that just libraries are such a wonderful resource. And anyone who makes a habit of reading, it's the very best thing you can do for yourself, is to invest in your own brain.
Leaders are readers for sure, whether that be by audiobook in the new and beautiful world that we live in, or whether it be by physical copy. Inputting knowledge makes a difference. I'm a fan of saying that 15 minutes a day of pouring into yourself will allow you to change your world, and will allow your actions to change the world. And certainly you can read a lot more than that.
I love to read.
Yeah, as do I, but I find that bite-sized chunk of committing to 15 minutes for yourself is a good place to start. When You hear others, myself included, say Julie is an example that dreams are real, that her life, what she does, you really your world, you're an example that dreams are real. How does that make you feel?
Well, first of all, it's quite a compliment. It does stun me a bit, though, um, because I am living a better life than I ever imagined. And yes, I did have a dream. I mean, all it was having a house, but your life can be better than you've ever dreamed. And so when I hear dreams are real, I'm like, oh, you have no idea how real they can be.
You become the inspiration for others, but it sounds like also you have had a lot of success at being the conduit for others or an encouragement to others. It's good to have proof at the other end of the dream, I suppose.
Well, maybe that's one of the good things about being older. Some of your listeners may be, much younger than I am. I don't mind sharing. I'm 62. So I've had time for my life to evolve and for my dreams to evolve. But for anybody out there that's much younger, I would really like to encourage them that dreams really are real, and just start making steps. It doesn't matter how long it takes. Just make steps and go in the direction of what you really want.
Right. You're going forward or backward every day. If you think you're sitting still, you're moving backwards. So make a choice to go one step forward every day.
Absolutely.
Or as we say at jujitsu, even if it's a struggle, which if you're grappling in jujitsu, it is, get 1% better every day.
That's right.
So we'll move on to the next segment, which is our Fortunate Five. Our Fortunate Five just is asking a few questions, not surprisingly, 5 of them that are about different ways in which we're fortunate, things that we've done, things that we'd like to do, things that could be coming. The first of those is this: what is the most exciting or adventurous thing that you've ever done? And we may have already heard the answer earlier, or you may have a different one in mind.
No, actually, you did hear it earlier. It was when I met the Ashwar people.
It was when you proved that blondes do exist.
I really did. We're a unicorn, I guess.
I've often thought that. So that's a pretty incredibly adventurous thing, and it was part of a greater adventure as well, right? You were traveling around even more as part of that.
I love to travel, but this was something that I had always wanted to do, was to meet the Ashwar people, and I had wanted that since I was in my 20s. You're probably wondering, well, gee, how does she even know about them if they're that remote? I had been a volunteer at the Cincinnati Zoo, and the eco lodge I went to was called Kapowie, and Kapowie is famous at the Cincinnati Zoo because it is a collaboration between the native tribes there in the Amazon and actually a hotel corporation. And when I went, I was in my 50s, but at this time, it is completely run by the Ashwars. So that's why I had wanted to go there.
How did it feel sitting there with the chief who didn't believe blondes existed, and now here you are in the middle of the tribe with the kids looking at you and the chief looking at you? How did it feel? What went through your mind?
Truthfully, it felt like a dream. It felt like a dream because, I really was amazed I was there. And secondly, I had no idea that we would even be invited. This village that we went to, there's only 6,000 Ashwar people, and they live in little villages up and down a tributary of the Amazon. And it was very National Geographic-like. And by the way, he comes out with a shotgun. So some of it was a little spooky, but it was one of the most thrilling things that ever happened. And I have to say here that I'm very fortunate that I have a husband that likes to travel too. And so he likes adventures as well.
That's great. He's also a super nice guy, having had the chance to meet him. So it's great that you guys have those opportunities. What is something that you wish you were good at but aren't yet? You're good at so many things that you figured out. What's something you want to be good at?
Marketing. I'm a really good salesperson, one-on-one working with people, but I don't know much about marketing. In fact, I'm trying to learn that skill. I listen to webinars, particularly for nonprofits. One of the things I do is I also write the quarterly newsletter for PAWS. And of course, since our goal is to find homes for really abandoned animals, you have to get the word out. And I'm trying to learn more and more about marketing and social media, and it's something I'd like to get good at.
It's an ever growing and ever more important skill, and one that I'm working on as well. I appreciate that struggle for sure. Going along with the travel that you've done, what is the best meal or food experience? So either one, a meal or a food experience that you've ever had?
Wow. I went to the Tour d'Argent in Paris, France, and had a French meal. Now, I didn't pay for this. I have to tell you this. My husband won an award at work, and it was like a Night on the Town award. And so he asked if he could take me there for my birthday.
Wow.
And the company paid for it. But it was quite the meal. They are known for their duck. In fact, they bring you out a registration card with your duck number.
Huh.
And, all the wine and all that. I'm not even much of a wine drinker. But it was very French, and everything was delicious and beautiful to look at.
And you don't get a registration card with most dinners.
No, you don't. I have that card in my scrapbook.
That's a pretty amazing experience that most people will never have. Very, very cool for sure. You've traveled all over the world. Is there somewhere left that is still a dream travel destination for you? Somewhere that you say, I still want to go there?
Antarctica. Again, I'm very much into animals, and I used to be a Cincinnati Zoo volunteer. And one thing that I would like would be to be able to see the penguins in their native habitat. So I would like to go to Antarctica.
That sounds like a pretty amazing goal. I'd love to make it to Antarctica as well. The closest I've been is the southern coast of Australia, and seeing the penguins swim into the rocks there where they live.
Oh, wow.
And it was just earlier this year as part of our part of the trip in Asia, on the front end of that trip. And we would go out, they have people come out on the dock at night, and you'll see the penguins who swam out of the rocks in the morning and swam, I believe it was like 20 miles out. They go hunting to go get some fish, and then they swim all the way back, and they come climbing into the rocks, and they disappear into the rocks, and then they feed their kids. It's a pretty surreal moment there at night.
That is amazing.
Yeah, I had never seen anything like it. Just penguins walking right along your feet, not in a cage, not in anywhere, just in their own little environment. It was pretty fun. So Antarctica for you. Now thinking almost a hard right turn for question number 5, thinking of the future, what is something that you hope or believe will be the most exciting invention of the next 30 years?
I believe that we will find a solution to our terrible plastic problem. I don't know what that solution will look like, but I believe we will find a way to break it all down. And really, we're kind of poisoning ourselves, and we're poisoning our planet. And I believe that, frankly, desperation will make us come up with a solution.
I agree. I believe we're getting close to that point. There are a number of environmentalists that I'm pretty close with that are working on that problem along with others, and with the effort and, as you say, the urgency, the need, the desperate need that is there. I have to imagine something will be invented to solve that problem, whether it's moving away from it to some alternative use, whether it's finding a way to break it down, whether it is finding a way to clean it up and repurpose it, even out of the oceans and the air, who knows? But that would be an incredible invention for sure.
That would be something that I would love to see.
Well, Juli, I've really enjoyed having you here. As we wrap up, is there a certain thought or message that you'd like to leave with our audience?
The only thought that I'd like to leave, just from my own experience, I would encourage everyone, if you are facing challenges right now, they're not permanent. There are ways to move past them, no matter what it will be. And I would just like to leave that thought with people, that challenges they're just never permanent, and you can surmount them, no matter what they are.
I like to say, good, bad, or indifferent, this too shall pass, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Fair enough. And where can our audience find you if they want to connect with you online or otherwise? If they're interested in finding out more about Pause and your work there, where should they go look?
Well, if they would like to know about Pause, they can find us on the web. It's www.pauseadoptioncenter.org. And we're in Monroe, Ohio, if you need to look that up. There's a number of Pause organizations that are unaffiliated with each other. They're just called Pause. And so you might need to know where the location is. It is Monroe, Ohio.
Great. And anywhere that they should find you online, or are you more of the secluded type?
Well, no, if someone wants to contact me, they certainly can. It's my first name, Juli, Juli, .Nimitz, NIMITZ @yahoo.com.
Perfect. So that's how you can reach out to Juli. Please look at the Pause site. The work that Juli and her team are doing there is really incredible with these animals and rescuing them, making sure that they find good homes to go. The pictures she posts are they are powerful enough to cause me to tear up at times and to get excited and to wish that I had an opportunity to have room for 30 or 40 animals. I'm working on that. Maybe that's my own little way of helping. Juli, thank you so much for being with us. I greatly appreciate it, and I'm sure that our audience will enjoy our time as well.
And thank you, Dan. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you for joining us on the Dreams Are Real podcast. If anything we've said has inspired you to dream bigger, live more boldly, or move closer to your ideal life, please reach out and let us know. And also be sure to share this episode with a friend. We would be honored if you would like, subscribe, or leave a review for our show on your favorite podcasting platform. And for more discussion of this episode and all things related to the Dreams Are Real podcast, and to receive your free download of Dan's Defining Your North Star training, please join our Dreams Are Real community on Facebook. Until next time, be amazing and keep crushing it.